Welcome to Russar. Kato and I are now in the Royal Palms Cemetery South, right?
Absolutely. We're here located in St. Petersburg, Florida, Royal Palm Cemetery South.
And the specific area is called?
Gulfport.
Gulfport, okay.
The Gulfport area.
So one thing I want to, some people might be like, well, why are we going to cemeteries, right? And I think it's important to describe what a taphophile is, which is how you describe yourself, right?
Pretty much a lot of people never even used or heard the term or read it anywhere, but there is an official name. People who actually study cemeteries and graves and so on, we are called taphophiles. And something that I've been involved with on findagrave.com, I've been using that web page to log down everything that I'm able to find out of the blue, be it from newspapers or articles or some cutout somewhere shared. And when I find those names, I usually connect. And if the name was written in Russian, their graves might be written in Russian. There was nobody really knew maybe officially how their name was officially written in English. So finding these names and mix and matching, sometimes very difficult, but that's how we find graves. We might not know who these people are at a cemetery, but there's history behind practically about everyone. You're searching for one thing, you end up going down different rabbit holes with all these other names. And that's how I discovered the person who actually created he's not the person behind Ziploc bags. But when I discovered that Stupnikov was actually one of the first people to focus on the idea how to preserve food in America using resealable bags before Ziplocs. Ziploc took the next step. He created the fold. I mean, that's not anywhere, and yet that's still history. Being a taphophile, no one pays me or whatever. That's my football Sundays. That's my Monday night footballs. That's my life. To this day, I continue on unknowingly or knowingly, wanting, not wanting, it just pops up. And I find something, I try to connect it. So here we are, starting with my parents at this cemetery, which houses actually, there's over 20,000 graves here, but of which there's about 600 graves dedicated to the Russian Orthodox community that was living here or living their last lives here. My parents moved down here in 1995, and they were happy to be located in this location, and they were happy to say this is going to be their final home, resting home. So my dad, my mom, Царство им небесное. The location we're at, it's called the Royal Palm Cemetery South. And the community that was located here grew with the church. The church, St. Andrew's Stratolatis, for a second here. St. Andrew's Stratolatis they started from a garage in 1948, and eventually they built a church on 15th Avenue, which became the first official church. And yet in the beginning was called the Russian Serbian Orthodox Church. We're bound to bump into, though I don't have any recollection. I tried to find something about this person, but nothing. You could see only the name Pyotr and Praninsky with an Orthodox cross, and you could see the year 1973. Died fairly young if you think about it per se, so he was born in 1898. There's other graves that you bump into here that I have researched, that I did find out. And it's interesting. So you'll see a combination, a selection of Serbian and Russian names here mixed together. Why? Like I said, the church initially was a Russian Serbian church, and they used to go to our church St. Andrews, until they finally developed their own church. Here's an interesting thing. You see the name like Glenn, but he was Glenn officially in America, but he was Golubince, I believe, in reality. Golubintsev, right? So you could see the name here, Dr. Anatoly Golubintsev. But he was officially in America, went by the name of Glenn. And we could walk around here. Yulia Yarinov, again, there are some names visible, but this is the most interesting grave from this election. So you've got here as Veronika Bakhenskaya, who died in 1995. She died here, and Otets Igor Shitikov already interred her here. This was her name. She was known as Vera Severnaya. She was performing for the white emigres, for the white army, and she was known as Vera Severnaya. Царствие небесное. We could move around here. There's, like I said, there's over 600 graves. You can see Adele Filata, Peter Filata, 1988, 1985. Keller, but what was his real name? We won't know. They all were living in such a time where you're talking about the older generation, the grandparents' generation that were here, and they had to somehow disguise themselves as who they were. They were afraid that they were being followed by the KGB, the communists, and so on. Look at this name, right? Vera Grekova, right? Urozhena Babushkina, right? But there's no years present. You could see a face, and thankfully you could see these images of who they were. Yet someone put maybe by accidentally someone put it in here, but you always find these little things, a yaitzo that someone might put an Easter egg. Here's also an interesting point. On this side, this section right here, it's dedicated to the pre-Baltics, Lithuanians, Latvians. This is their section. And there's still Russians who are interred here that decided, because they might have been born and they might have been more associated or connected to the Lithuanian church. Rightfully so. I could bring you to such a grave here. So the Kirsanovi, for example, there are members of both sides of the churches. The sad part about cemeteries, you can see that the ground is always moving, and even if you have a foundation, we're on sand. Basically, we're on sand, so all this gets maneuvered around, moved around. Anyway, there were Russians, possibly with a lot pre-Baltic connection. They prefer to be interred here as well. So, but you look around these names, you could find a combination of Russian pre-Baltic names. Kirisenkov, Erdeli, broken cross from the hurricane. Actually, this thing toppled from the hurricane, and the cross broke down. Again, all these problems persist in so many cemeteries today. But you can see that Alexander Erdeli died in 1991, unmarked graves, but they might have been interred somewhere else as well. This is also interesting. So how could Fyodorov be interred here with a lopsided cross? The third bar shouldn't be etched that way, yet it is. 1998, Pogorelova, Kuznetsova. You can see that most of the people in this area are interred in the 80s and 90s and whatever, beginning of this century. There are interesting people, however, interred here. Again, missing pamyatniki somewhere down the line, something happened to the pamyatnik. But this is interesting here too. So, Mikhail Satunov, he made it a point to have a Russian flag displayed. when I tried to find out about him, he has a Russian-Greek connection. And he was involved with horses. So this is his, you can see this in being written in Greek. I forgot, I already researched what this is, but unfortunately I don't remember. A Russian. And there's another person here, Bush. I remember such names even in New York. So Nikolai Sokolenko, I presume he was a serious chess player. Russians did like to play chess, that's true, right? But he made it a point to show that he was a chess player. Unfortunately, no wife, he was all by himself. Why? Why are these crosses put this way on this side and crosses the other way on the other side? Interesting questions. But which way are we facing and so on? There must be a good reason. Unfortunately, I don't know all these reasons at times. Zoe agrees. But these are all recent, right? And pretty much it says Igor Shitikov was actually interring these people most of the time. They found their final resting space here. And so this is considered the newest section of in the Royal Palm. There's an older section, graves that were interred in the 50s and 60s and 70s. We'll walk over there in a few minutes. But there are interesting names. This also was toppled. But I don't think it was toppled because of the hurricane. You could see that a tractor probably hit this and this was toppled. But they at least did put it up. These are famous names. I forgot right now, but it's something we could look it up. I think I've got it all on what I was able to find. I tried to save the information on Find a Grave sites. And I'll put it all together. So remember you saw an article about Ozirovskaya. This is Catherine. And Catherine, I remember her. She was Russian Polish. And she used to make the best bulki, the best kulichi. She would make the prosphora at church. Her husband, who died in '97, Vladimir's brother, was the UFO specialist. He wrote about UFOs, several books in Russian, articles in Novoruskoye Slovo, and he was really a specialist. So Vladimir wasn't. It was his brother. I think his brother was Nikolai. So this is actually new. This was even here. This was even here last week. But I guess they realized that someone's putting up Russian Orthodox crosses, wooden crosses. You won't find wooden crosses in Florida. It just doesn't exist. So I guess the family saw that someone's putting up finally wooden, not finally, but they're putting up wooden crosses here. Why can't we? How much do pamyatniki cost today? Right? How much? So this is Cincinnati Kravchenko's husband interred here. This is Galia, Grace. And they asked, Otец Andrei asked, do you remember where she was interred? And I said, yeah, this was her because Cincinnati is here and Tita Galia is here. So we found this grave and he wanted to put up the wooden cross for her, which is the right thing to do. I appreciate that. She just died Saturday, Irina Shidlovskaya. I think I did remember telling you this. He died just recently in 21, so ее, наверное, будут отпевать this week. I don't know how it is in New York, but I think it's the same problem. The funerals are overloaded with a lot of deaths going on still to this day, that you have to pin them in, along with the cemeteries, to find an accurate time, a day, and it could last as much as 7, 8, 9 days, a waiting list. So she's definitely going to be interred sometime this week already. This week. This is a Milian family. Milian, they were one of the rare families that that grew up in the Tampa Bay area, the Russian emigre. They were here from the 60s already. So this is a rare, and this is their son that I met in Moscow. He used to deliver packages from my parents. So when my parents would need to pass something over to me in Moscow when I was living and working there, or I had to pass something over to my parents, he was the messenger man for me. So Царствие им небесное. Again, this is very new, and they're trying to keep it in a somewhat of a Russian Orthodox style, right, with a small little covering here. They're не крыша, but I'm sure there's a name for it. So this is Professor Anatoly Sokolsky. He lived over 100 years old. It's pretty much his doing of putting St. Petersburg, Florida, the connection to Russia, that after researching many archives, putting it down, it wasn't just talk that there was some Peter Dementiev. He did this information back in the 50s when he was already a professor at USF, and made sure that there's going to always be a connection. The City Council of St. Petersburg, Florida, put it into law that Peter Dementiev was born in Russia. He was one of the founding fathers. Yeah, there's a legend about the coin toss, but let that be. Along with John Williams, they were the founding fathers of St. Petersburg. He dug this information. This was his life. This is before the internet. This is going through numerous newspaper articles, numerous books to eventually really focus on the Russian culture, the Russian connection here in St. Petersburg. And what's interesting is that he has his name only in Russian, not in English. It's all these small little things. We wonder why, but I guess that's the way he wanted it. Царствие им небесное. Very important to the Russian community of St. Petersburg. So he came out here also in the 50s, 60s. Now, as you are aware, we had the Russian Heritage Organization. And Tatiana, whose Saint's Day was actually yesterday, Tatiana and Albert are the parents to Margot Katimatidis. And Tatiana was the founding member of Russian Heritage. She made it a point that Margot has to cherish her Russian roots. And she made it a point to pass it over with the idea of running the Russian heritage, even the ball, that it's important to keep the community together. So bless Tatiana and Albert's hearts for what they did and what Margot and John continue on to this day. Tatiana is having a dedicated memorial, a monument dedicated to her, put up on 400 Central downtown St. Petersburg, where John is putting up the tallest building on the west coast of Florida. It's the tallest building, and it's going to be dedicated to Tatiana. And that building is going to have a nickname as Tatiana. So if there's a place to go to, right now it's called 400 Central. But they were saying they're going to be nicknamed, let's go to Tatiana's building. So that's very interesting too. There's plenty of interesting names here. Sometimes the history behind them, you can see this person was also a Koromilov. Atitz Igor has a lot of actual history because some of the information has been passed over, but he was a professor, he was a writer, he was a historian. And you can see that these images are saved of these people, otherwise everything's getting lost. And that's really sad if you think about it. It's really sad to see these history lost. I'm trying to make sure that we're going to try to save it one way or another. Okay, so let's walk over here for a second. Again, there's so many of these. Зеленоронок архpriest Михаил, Серафима, Mama, Вечная память, Ладия, Коля. We love you, Baba. Now, there were several churches already afterwards. So St. Andrew's Stratolatus was predominantly the Русский Зарубежная Церковь, the Russian Orthodox Church abroad church. But there is a Moscow Patriarchate Church at the times when the church was separated, right? It was not united yet. And there are also, there was also an OCA church in Tampa, which always had its problems of expansion, and eventually they closed. Russians also tended to go to Greek Orthodox Church, like the Artibushevi. He preferred going to the Greek Orthodox because at the time when they moved to the Tampa Bay area, there were no Russian Orthodox churches. The Russian Orthodox started in 1948, but before that, there was only the Greek Orthodox Church. And with the Greek Orthodox Church, he felt a little bit more home. It was a little bit of his connection. If this is open, and it should be, here we have Vera Espinola Biri, and it's Vera along with Tatiana Vondasar, who established the Russian Heritage Organization. She died in 2011. Tatiana Vondasar died in 2009, but it was them who made the Russian Heritage Organization work. And along with Professor Sokolsky, who lived the longest, past them already, that they made the connection between Russia and America with Russian heritage and connected to the SPIFs. SPIF stands for St. Petersburg International Folk Fair. And Russians have always been involved with that. We always had the biggest pavilion, the biggest because all the pensioners were happy to hang out there and promote Russianists. So all the old pensioners would dress up in their kokoshniki, right, the Ruski rubashki, and a majority of those dresses were saved. They're actually saved. Tatiana Vondasar, she still has them hanging, specifically clothes, housed where it's in a closet. It's nice to say these. Now, why she was interred in this part, I guess her kids wanted her to be interred here. I prefer being interred underground, but you know, this is what it is. During Krasnaya Gorka, Radenitsa, we still do come out here, but it's not the same as it is in Novodiviva or Jordanville or in Lakewood where they have these gatherings. So no, but we still do with the priest, be it Atets Igor. Right now, maybe not so much because his health is falling. I'll come here with Father Stefan Zaremba or Father Michael. And we will go through all these, as much as we can, all these graves here. And Читаем Христос Воскресе, both in Russian and in English and at times in Serbian. But there's a lot of mix and matches. So here's you've got a Koskinas, you've got an Orthodox, and I presume another Christian cross. This is one of the oldest cemeteries where all the dignitaries were interred. We have the founding pioneers of St. Petersburg interred in this location right here. They're also famous writers, they're famous politicians. But with a year ago, we had strong hurricanes that really destroyed a lot of this here. This used to be a pond here with palm trees growing all around. It was like a tornado came down and just wrecked this here. So this is actually a very interesting part. It's overgrown here. You can see that everything in Florida grows quickly. So if these, I forgot the name of these bushes here. That's a junipers, right? So this has grown, but the people here interred, you can see Sulima. And Sulima Baris died in 1986. He was the first one you could see of the family here. Boris Sulima was involved with the standardization of the Food and Drug Administration, military, all the food standards for the military servicemen and so on, and for the cuts of beef and so on. He was deeply involved with standardization processes for the United States government. Kind of interesting. Now, and of course they're connected to the Roshka. You can see the Sulima Roshka connection here. She died already at my time, but she died in she died in New York somewhere. But not connected somehow for the time being. We're not connected to somehow to our church in recent times. Again, interesting name, Roshko, Sulima, Spasi, Sakhrini, Rabitwe. They chose to be interred here. They put this up. This is the only such Russian Orthodox grave in this situation. And as we just spoke to one of the directors of the cemetery, he was excited to find out some history to this grave because they don't have any history as well. And that's my point, that a lot of this information gets lost. And if it's not properly shared, it just gets buried away. You have to understand, this is not a typical Russian Orthodox type of grave situation, right? And coincidentally, someone was interred here, non-Russian related, but it's the same style. So I guess Boris wanted to be interred the same way. And he got this location. So God bless these people. So the Russians are thrown around here. The Georgians, the Gruzini, the Ukrainians, whatever. There's a lot of them. But this is one section, the older section. And we're gonna jump up here in a second. Yes, there's other names in these locations, all Russian names, or a combination of Russian, English, and so you'll see the 80s here, the 70s already, people already interred here. Margarita Osufyeva, Vasily Osufyev, Evgenia Yefimovna Murzanyova. And she made it a point to say that she was born in Russia and died in Winter Park, Florida in 1977. And of course, just like often enough, if there were no next of kin, they don't have any final dates and no one really followed through. Or they didn't have money. I don't know, right? This is a good example, right? Voinska Starshna Kazakhs, Kurzimova, Voronezh, from parents. And again, a good example, right? So from parents, okay, so died, but they wrote peace, not mir. Maybe they couldn't write it and get the gravestone manufacturer, etcher to write mir or something like that. So finding peace was actually very strange for me. But again, Gorshkovy, Pakhomov. Oh boy, this is definitely not Russian. Something that I learned here while being here. I'd never seen this, I never knew this before. But you can see there's a chain link fence here with posts. And there's Russian names here, but I did not know there's a story behind. There's some guidelines, some laws that in Judaism, they have to be separated. They can't be interred with the others, the non-Jews, right? So they have to have their place cornered off with a chain, with posts that they are not interred with the rest. Interesting. And yet there are some Russian names here. And it goes on. It's just this one section here. Same style. You could see they were probably married together, or Irina, not Irina, Itin, Ni Baudon. And yet he was married to engineer Vladimir Itin, воин Белой армии. I love this. And here's a family where Автомоновы, so Archbishop, Archiepiscop Nikolai Avtonomov. And there are some stories about him. For those who know, great, but there are some stories about him in the church. But this is where he lived. This is where he was our priest here. And the family stretches in here. So there's also Anatoly Avtomonov here. We're getting wind here right now. So weather's changing real quickly. This is the wind, this is the weather that's coming down from New York. You guys were hit with 18 degrees or 8 degrees temperatures. So for Radonitsa, we literally go up and down all these aisles because there's so many names scattered everywhere, right? Mikhail Shizhanov, 1974. And of course, the cemetery throughout many years, many attempts would always ask the Russian priest, would you want a section of the cemetery dedicated to the Russian Orthodox Church? Want to keep it as all one? And of course, maybe there were attempts, but the church was never that rich enough to buy out or ask to have a sectioned it off. So that's why you got these mixes and matches here of non-Russian with Russian. Not that it's bad, but the point of they didn't think about the future of locating all these graves, right? So here we have also a Medvedevy, right? 1983, 1986, and it's everywhere. Here's an interesting last name, right? Chernobab. Try translating that into English. Literally translating it. That's always interesting, the way last names were always translated. It matters where they ended up, either from Russia migrating to Serbia or to some other European country, Asian country. The way the last names would be shortened or changed completely. And, right, so another Archimandrit. My parents knew some of these people already. And I think I was here at her funeral when my parents, just by chance when I was visiting my parents, when I was coming in from Moscow, I think I was here at her funeral. I remember a moment like that. And of course this stretches onwards, but it's now beginning to rain. The priest and a matushka from the 70s, they're interred way over there. I don't know if we'll make it right now or not. I don't want to get exactly wet. And you can see the Jewish section, it still stretches out here. So, and see the problem here, this is sand. Florida is pretty much coral and sand. And all these names, all these palms, you could get covered. So there might be missing, forgot names here. Sorry, I want to go this way. Mazurovsky, I believe, are interred right over there as well. And this is the sad part. Like I said, it's not all in one area. So a person who likes to dig history here, right? Niedzhvetsky, 1961, 1967. they're here. There's a whole bunch of them. Golubovy, 1957. Right, so this is Martha and Reverend Vasily Kolubaevy, 1955. He was the priest of our church, died in 1955. And the crosses still stand, which is fantastic. Царствие им всем небесное. And you'll find these are 50s and 60s. They're all interred around here. What's the history behind them? How do they make it here? Mazuryenko. Why did they choose St. Petersburg is a question that somehow we got to still find out the real reason. Was it, as you would suggest, economic reasons? Was it cheaper living here than was living in New York? Well, predominantly so, yes, I would agree probably. So Mogilevsky, that's it, right? And they're also, Mogilevsky also was a family that lived here in the Tampa Bay area. And I believe so, they still live in the Tampa Bay area on that side, in Hillsborough. Glazilina, Sergei, Anastasia, Bukreevy, Sophia, Evgeny. I think the oldest grave was like from 1951 that I personally found. And yes, there are metrические книги. There are recorded this, but it's not in full. So pretty much that's the best I could cover at this point. It's beginning to rain. This was a section of the pioneers who moved to St. Petersburg or developed St. Petersburg in the 20s, 30s, 40s. This was predominantly their resting place here. And I like the name, Sleeper. There's very interesting last names here too, actually, connected to real Southern names that you only hear in the South. Of course, you see Tomovici. So, but you understood that it's Serbian, but it was a connection. The question is, were they of Russian descent? Were they Serbian descent? Was the father? It's hard to say right now what their background was, but that's why the Serbian and the Russian community have always been together. It's important to keep this history alive. It's important to understand the cemeteries, because sometimes the cemeteries could tell you a very interesting history. The problem is researching it out. And there's still possibilities of going through old newspapers, be it English, be it the Russian ones. Predominantly Novoye Ruskoye Slovo had a lot of, that was the most important communication between all of America. If someone wanted to make it a point that they died, the wife was still alive or the husband was alive, they would try to put it in Novoye Ruskoye Slovo. It was normal to see those such names. We need access to those names at times, and have an organization where we could research these names and go through the metrические книги and go through these books of funeral deaths and so on. Be it state archives. Could you imagine the amount of work? The thing is, you question, who needs this really? And there are people in that position. Who really needs it? Why? Well, from my standpoint and my interest, I think it's important to preserve the Russian-American history. That's my point. Again, thank you.